want to talk about through axles working with disc brake wheels and the proper way to remove the wheel, such as if you need to travel with the bike again in the back of your car. Here I have 3 different bikes. There's a lot of different variations of the through axle that are on the market now. In all cases, typically they're working with a disc brake system that is hydraulic. And much like a regular disc brake hydraulic system, when the wheel's out, we want to put a spacer in between the pads of the caliper. So in other words, when the wheel is out, we don't want the pads to advance. If we were to hit the brake lever by mistake, we don't want the pads to advance because they may stay advanced and we won't be able to get the wheel back in. So whenever we have a wheel out of a bike that has disc brakes, especially hydraulic disc brakes, we want to put a spacer such as this, or maybe a piece of corrugated cardboard, something that will stay in place, so that if we do bump this lever, we don't advance those pistons. Let's take a look at each one of these through axles. Let me come over to this one first. First of all, we'll notice that this one here does not have a lever on either side. It works with a hex wrench on this side, typically a multi-tool. This case is 6 millimeters. Will fit into there. Whoops, let's get the right one, this side. Will fit into there so that we can loosen this up. Counterclockwise to take it out, clockwise to tighten it. You'll notice that this one, over here in this road bike, has a lever on here. This one we're simply just going to loosen the lever. There's different versions of levers. Some will have to open up and then rotate it. Others, we just simply rotate this. And in some cases, we have some through axle systems that if we look to the rear of the bike, we'll actually see a little Allen wrench that is stuck in, stays in place with an O-ring or some other mechanism, and we can pull it out of the back and transfer it and use it in the front as well. We have another lever on this side that works a little bit different. We'll talk about that. This does have a lever system now. So for now, we're going to make sure that that stays in its stand. Okay. Let's talk about this guy here. So to remove this, we're simply going to stick our Allen wrench in. We're going to loosen this up. We're going to rotate this. As we rotate her counterclockwise, the through axle starts to pop out. And it gets to a point that it'll just slide out. I'll put my tool down. We can pull the through axle completely out, place that down, and we can pull the rear wheel out. Or the front wheel rather. Now this is where we want to put our spacer into the caliper. So I'm going to take my spacer. Has a little bit of a clip on the end. That clip was going to connect with either a cotter pin or a screw that's at the back of the caliper. We're going to slide this between the 2 brake pads, and then that's going to clip in. Once it clips in, that'll stay in place. When it's time to put the wheel back in, we're simply going to pull that spacer out, place that down. We're going to come back over here. We're going to take the wheel. We're going to line up the rotor with the brake caliper in between the pads. Also with the fork, slide it in. Oops, there we go. Take our through axle, we're going to slide it in, kind of wiggle the wheel and the fork just a little bit so it goes in. And then we're going to use our tool again here, our hex wrench. We're going to rotate that until it stops. Make sure that hex wrench is all the way inserted so that you're not partially, it's all the way in. Now we're going to get to the point, we want to get this pretty snug. This has a torque spec, if we look here, that goes from 9 to 13.5 newton meters. That's quite a bit. That's pretty tight. So if a small Allen wrench like this or multi-tool, we basically want to give it a good oomph, a good push. Get it nice and snug. Then go ahead and remove that. Spin the wheel, and the rotor shouldn't be rubbing. Now let's take a look at this one over here on this road bike or this cross bike. In this case, again, the threads are on this side of the fork, so it can change between the different bikes. This one has a lever. What we're going to simply do is rotate it counterclockwise. That slides out. The wheel comes out just like the other one did. Again, we would stick our spacer in between the caliper when we're transporting it, so if we hit the lever, brake lever, we don't advance our pads. Then we would take our spacer out. Wheel goes back in. It lines up with the rotor. The fork end sits on the axle just a little bit. We take our through axle, we wiggle it just a little bit, find the threads, and we rotate it to get it on. And then again, we want to get this good, tight, snug, and it should feel free without rubbing. This one over here works a little bit different. This tends to be on some Suntour forks, SR Suntour forks. This will notice the through axle actually goes all the way through the fork, sticks out. There were no threads on this side of the fork. There is a lever arm. We're going to open that lever. There we go. And in this case, we don't need to rotate this, but what we're going to do instead is we're going to push on this. We're going to hold, what I'm going to do is going to hold this in place. We're going to push this metal piece in. It's like a collet system. I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera. We'll zoom in. But as we push this collet system in, this gets smaller and I can actually push, I'm pushing it this way, and start to push the through axle through. Supporting the fork, that pulls all the way out, place it down, the wheel pops out just like before. Again, we would put a spacer in between our brake pads when we're transporting so we don't hit the brake lever to advance the pistons. When we get to our destination, we pull out that spacer. We're going to roll our wheel back into place, line up the pads with the rotor. There it goes. Get the fork to sit onto the front wheel. Bear with me a minute. There we go. We're going to take our through axle. In this case, we're going to simply, let's take a quick look at that. You can see the through axle again. There's that collet mechanism. We want to make sure that's fully expanded. Sometimes it gets stuck closed. We do not want that. So we want that to be fully expanded. We're going to take this, we're going to push it into the hole, kind of tap it, line it through. Goes all the way through. On this side you can see that it's expanded. That's important. Again, we want to make sure it's expanded. Then we're going to close the through axle, give it a full close. And again, this through axle or this lever, when we close it, should not hit the fork. We want to make sure it's fully closed. Okay, there we have it. That's through axles with disc brakes. We move on the front wheel. Thanks.